Samantha Hale had always been tall, strong, and noticeable. People said she looked like she was meant to stand on a stage, or a court, or anywhere that demanded attention. But on her wedding day, standing inside the small white chapel with roses hanging from every window, she felt more like someone trapped in a box that kept shrinking around her. The room smelled of perfume and flowers, and the air felt warm against her skin. Sam stood in front of a long mirror, staring at the lace wedding dress that hugged her shoulders and flowed to the ground like a gentle river. The dress was beautiful, everyone told her that, but it didn't feel like her. It felt like something she was wearing for other people, like a costume she had been pushed into. Outside the dressing room, she could hear music playing softly. Guests were already seated, whispering, waiting. Someone laughed. Someone dropped something. A child asked when the bride was coming out. Every sound made Sam's heart beat faster, as if it was trying to warn her. Her mother entered the room with a big smile. "Sweetheart, it's time," she whispered softly, touching the side of Sam's arm. Sam nodded, but her throat felt tight. She looked again at herself in the mirror, but she didn't see a joyful bride. She saw a woman pretending to be what everyone wanted. Her mother adjusted the veil and stepped back. "You look perfect." Sam wanted to smile. She wanted to say thank you. But instead, she took a slow breath and whispered, "I'm not sure I can do this." Her mother froze. "Nerves are normal," she said quickly, as if that could fix everything. "Everybody gets nervous. You'll be fine once you walk out." But Sam didn't feel nervous, she felt wrong. She felt like she was walking toward a life she didn't choose, like she had been moving on a path set by others. After her mother left the room, Sam sat down on the small bench and closed her eyes. Her hands trembled on her lap. She tried to steady her breathing, but each breath felt shallow. She remembered the night her fiancé proposed. He was kind, charming, and everyone liked him. But even then, when he knelt down with the ring, she had felt a small tug inside her chest, like something whispering, "Is this really what you want?" She ignored it, telling herself she should say yes because he cared for her, because the timing was right, because her family liked him, because she didn't want to disappoint anyone. Now that tiny whisper had grown into a loud, overwhelming voice inside her. A bridesmaid stepped into the room and handed Sam the bouquet. "Everyone's ready," she said brightly. Sam stood up on shaky legs. Her heart thudded harder. She looked down the hallway. At the very end, she could see the doors of the chapel slightly open. A soft glow of sunlight shone through them. The bridesmaid lifted Sam's veil, giving her one last smile. "Let's go." Sam took one step forward, then another, but the closer she got to the doors, the more something inside her tightened. It felt like a knot pulling itself tighter and tighter until she could barely breathe. Just a few more steps, and she would be standing in front of everyone. Family, friends, neighbors. Everyone would look at her, expecting her to walk down the aisle with a calm smile, expecting her to promise a future she wasn't sure she wanted. Her chest felt heavy. Her throat felt tight. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. She stopped walking. "Sam, are you okay?" the bridesmaid asked softly. Sam swallowed hard. Her voice felt trapped. She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she turned slowly and looked toward a side door that led outside. A warm gust of fresh air entered through a small opening in the frame. It felt clearer than the air in the chapel. It felt freeing. Before she even realized what she was doing, she lifted her dress with both hands and walked toward that door. Her steps quickened. Her breath quickened. Every part of her felt pulled in that direction. The bridesmaid called out her name, but Sam didn't stop. She pushed the door open, and a flood of sunlight washed over her. The sky was wide and bright, stretching endlessly across the small Texas town. The wind tugged gently at her veil, making it flutter like a feather. Sam stepped outside onto the grass. The quiet of the open air hit her like a calm wave. It was the first moment of peace she had felt all day. Then she ran. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't plan anything. She just ran barefoot across the soft ground, away from the chapel, away from the music, away from the expectations. Her dress rustled loudly with every step, but she didn't care. She felt the earth beneath her feet, the warm sun on her face, the rhythm of her breath, finally belonging to her again. Behind her, she heard distant voices calling her name. Someone shouted to stop her. Someone else sounded confused, but their voices grew softer as she ran farther. The only sound she focused on was the wind rushing past her ears. The road ahead stretched long and dusty, leading past fields of tall grass that swayed with the breeze. She kept running until the chapel disappeared behind the rows of trees. She reached the main dirt road and slowed down to catch her breath. Her heart was racing, but it felt different now. It felt like it was beating for her, not for anyone else. She bent down, resting her hands on her knees. Her wedding dress was slightly wrinkled, and her veil had slipped to one side. She let out a shaky laugh, half relieved and half scared. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself. She didn't have an answer. A pickup truck approached from the distance, its wheels kicking up dust. She didn't recognize the truck at first, but as it got closer, she saw the familiar hat, the familiar posture behind the wheel. It was Luke Carter. Luke was a quiet rancher, known for his calm nature. He had grown up near Sam's family and had often helped at her father's ranch. He was close to Sam's older brother, and Sam had known him since she was a teenager. Luke rarely talked much, but when he did, his words were steady and sincere. The truck slowed when he saw her. Sam straightened up, brushing hair out of her face, embarrassed that she looked like a runaway in a wedding dress, standing in the middle of the road. Luke pulled over and stepped out. His boots touched the dirt softly, and he adjusted his hat as he walked toward her. His expression wasn't shocked or confused, it was concerned. "Sam?" he said gently. "You okay?" She tried to answer, but her throat tightened again. She looked down, gripping her dress in her hands. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, though she tried hard not to let them fall. Luke stood a few feet away, giving her space, waiting patiently. Finally, Sam opened her mouth, but the words came out louder than she expected, shaped by fear and frustration she had held inside for months. "You can't handle me," she burst out. "Just leave." The words surprised even her. They weren't meant to hurt him, they were meant to push away the world that kept demanding things from her. She felt overwhelmed, and Luke was the first person she saw. Luke didn't flinch. He didn't step closer or step back. He simply watched her with steady eyes. Understanding she wasn't angry at him, she was overwhelmed. He looked at the dust on her feet, the trembling in her hands, the way her breath shook. Then he said calmly, "You look like you need help. I'm not leaving." She shook her head. "I don't want anyone telling me what to do." "I'm not here to tell you anything," he said softly. "I'm just here to make sure you don't get hurt. That's all." Sam pressed her lips together, unsure how to respond. The tension inside her began to soften. Just a little. Luke nodded toward his truck. "Come sit. You don't have to talk. You don't have to explain. Just breathe." She hesitated, her heart thumped. But there was something safe about Luke, something steady. She felt like he meant what he said, and nothing more. Slowly, she walked toward the truck. Luke opened the passenger door. Sam climbed onto the seat, her dress gathering around her like soft clouds. Luke closed the door gently and walked around to his side. When he sat down, he didn't start the engine. He just rested his hands on the steering wheel and stared out at the quiet road. Sam let out a long breath, the first real one since that morning. The chapel was far behind her now, but she knew the real journey, her own truth, was only beginning. I sat quietly in the passenger seat, her breath still shaky. The inside of Luke's truck smelled faintly of leather and fresh hay, a scent she remembered from childhood trips to the ranch. It felt strangely comforting, even though her heart still raced from all the emotions built up inside her. Luke rested his hands on the steering wheel without turning on the engine. He didn't speak right away, which surprised Sam. Most people filled silence quickly, especially when someone looked upset. But Luke seemed to understand that she needed a moment to breathe, not another voice telling her what to do. Outside the window, the tall grass moved gently with the wind, brushing against one another like soft whispers. A butterfly flew across the road and disappeared into the field. Everything looked peaceful. So different from the tense atmosphere she had escaped at the chapel. Sam felt her throat tighten again, but this time not from panic, just from the strange relief of being away from all the pressure. Luke finally broke the silence, his voice calm and steady. "You want some water?" Sam looked at him, surprised by the simple question. He wasn't demanding anything. He wasn't asking her why she ran. He wasn't trying to fix everything in a hurry. It felt different, gentler. She nodded. Luke reached behind the seat and pulled out a bottle. "It's not cold," he said with a small smile. "But it should help." Sam took it and drank slowly. The water wasn't cold, but it cooled the dryness in her throat. When she finished, she closed the bottle and held it in her lap, staring at her hands. "You don't have to tell me anything," Luke said. "Not unless you want to." Sam let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "I don't even know what to say." "Oh, then don't worry about it," he replied simply. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a soft blanket covering her after a long, tense day. She leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes for a moment. After a while, Sam whispered, "I didn't plan this. I figured," Luke said gently. "I just felt so overwhelmed," she said softly, searching for the right words. "I was standing in that hallway, and everyone was waiting for me. All I could think was, what if this isn't right?" And that thought wouldn't go away. Luke listened without interrupting. Sam's voice trembled slightly. "I didn't want to disappoint anyone, but when I looked at those doors, it felt like I was walking towards something that wasn't my choice." Luke nodded slowly. "Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting that to yourself." Sam turned her head and looked at him. His profile was calm, eyes focused on the open road ahead, jaw relaxed, posture steady. He wasn't judging her or asking her to explain more. He was just there. That steadiness softened something inside her. After a long pause, Sam said in a small voice, "I didn't yell at you on purpose." He glanced at her, a tiny hint of amusement in his eyes. "I know. I was just scared," she continued. "Everything felt too big, too heavy." "That makes sense," he said. "You've had a long day." Sam let out a soft laugh, the first genuine sound she had made in hours. "That's one way to put it." Luke smiled, a small, quiet smile that made the tension in her shoulders ease. "You want to get out of here for a while?" he asked. "Not far, just somewhere quieter." Sam hesitated. She wasn't running away anymore, but she needed space before facing the world again. "Where would we go?" "Sensity. There's a spot near the river," Luke said. "Shady, quiet. Nobody goes there this time of day. You can sit, breathe, think." Sam liked the sound of that. It wasn't far. It wasn't a big decision. Just a peaceful place to breathe. "Okay," she whispered. Luke turned the key, and the engine hummed to life. As the truck moved down the dusty road, Sam watched the fields pass by the tall grass. Waving softly in the wind, the wildflowers dotted across the open land. The distant hills painted in warm afternoon light. The sky spread endlessly above them, calm and wide. For the first time that day, she felt the tightness in her chest begin to loosen. As they drove, Luke didn't ask questions. He didn't push her to talk. He only glanced over occasionally to make sure she was okay. Sam appreciated that more than she could say. They reached a small dirt path leading toward a cluster of trees. The branches formed a natural arch overhead, letting sunlight filter through in soft, warm lines. Luke parked the truck under the shade of a large oak tree. "Come on," he said gently as he stepped out. Sam gathered her dress carefully and slid down from the seat. Her bare feet touched the cool grass, soft and refreshing after the rough dirt road. She held her dress up with one hand and looked around. The river flowed quietly nearby, its surface shining like a long ribbon of blue silk. Birds chirped among the branches, and the soft sound of water moving over smooth stones filled the air. Sam felt herself breathe deeper. She hadn't realized how badly she needed fresh air until now. Luke walked a few steps ahead, then turned around. "This okay?" "It's perfect," she said softly. She walked toward the riverbank and sat down on a smooth patch of grass. Her dress spread around her like a white cloud. Luke sat a respectful distance away, close enough to be supportive but far enough to give her space. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Sam watched the river glide gently along, carrying leaves and tiny twigs on its surface. The flow was steady, calm, predictable. It felt like something she could trust. Finally, Sam said quietly, "Everyone kept telling me how lucky I was, how perfect the wedding was going to be, how beautiful everything looked." She paused, swallowing. "But nobody asked me how I felt." Quote, Luke looked at her, his expression soft. Sam took a shaky breath. "I think I tried too hard to make everyone else happy. I forgot to check if I was happy." Luke nodded slowly. "It happens to a lot of people." Sam looked surprised. "Even you?" Luke chuckled softly. "I'm not as steady as people think." "I've had my moments." Sam studied him, noticing how calm and grounded he seemed. It was hard to imagine him ever feeling lost. But the honesty in his voice made her believe him. "What did you do?" she asked softly. Luke thought for a moment. "I stopped pretending everything was fine. It wasn't easy. But pretending is heavier than telling the truth." Sam felt those words settle in her heart. She looked down at her hands, gently twisting the edge of her dress. "My fiancé is a good man," she whispered. "But sometimes, I feel like he sees the version of me that he wants. Not the real me." "And the real you?" Luke asked gently. She hesitated, unsure how to describe herself. "I'm loud sometimes, and stubborn, and not as graceful as everyone expects, and I don't always know what I want." She smiled a little at her own confession. Luke smiled too. "That's still you. And it sounds like someone real." Sam laughed a little, wiping a small tear from the corner of her eye. "I think I just needed someone to listen." Luke nodded. "You needed a moment to breathe." Sam looked at him, her eyes soft. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I just want to make sure you're okay." She gazed at the river again, her thoughts calmer now. "You said something earlier. That I looked like I needed help." "Well, you did," Luke said. "And that's not a bad thing. Everyone needs help sometimes." Sam nodded. It was strange how comforting his simple words were. After a while, Luke stood up and brushed off his jeans. "We don't have to go back yet," he said gently. "Not until you're ready." Sam looked up at him, grateful for his patience. She didn't know what she would do next. Whether she would return to the chapel, or call someone, or simply sit here a little longer, but she knew she wasn't alone. For the first time that day, she felt steady. She stood slowly, the soft grass brushing her dress. Luke offered his hand, not to pull her, not to force her, just to help her balance. She placed her hand in his, warm, steady, gentle. And in that moment, something inside her began to feel safe again. Sam stood by the river with Luke beside her, the quiet water flowing like a soft song. Her wedding dress, once heavy with pressure, now simply moved with the breeze. She took a deep breath, tasting freedom mixed with uncertainty. Luke didn't rush her or try to fill the silence. He simply stayed close enough for her to feel supported. After a long moment, she sat down again on the grass, pulling her dress around her legs. Luke lowered himself back down as well, resting his arms on his knees. The afternoon sun painted gentle golden lines through the leaves, making the river sparkle with shifting light. Sam looked at the moving water and whispered, "I feel like everything has been building up for months, maybe even years." Luke waited quietly for her to continue. "I always thought that if I tried hard enough, everything would fall into place," she said. "If I smiled at the right times, said the right things, followed the right path, everything would work out. But today, I realized something." Luke turned his head slightly toward her, listening. Sam took a shaky breath. I realized that none of it felt like my choice. It was like I was following a script that someone else wrote. Luke nodded gently. That must have been hard. It was, she whispered. I didn't want to let anyone down. Not my parents. Not his family. Not our friends. Everyone was so excited. They kept telling me how perfect the wedding would be. How lucky I was. How blessed I should feel. She paused as her voice softened. But nobody asked me if I felt ready. Or if I felt like this was the right life for me. A quiet breeze passed between them, ruffling Sam's hair. She brushed it back, gently. Luke said softly, "Sometimes people assume happiness for us without checking if it fits." Sam looked at him, her eyes moist but calmer than before. That's exactly what it felt like. She picked up a small pebble and tossed it into the water. Ripples spread across the surface in widening circles. Sam sighed. I think I kept telling myself I should be grateful. That everything looked beautiful. That he was a good man. That this was the right time. She paused, but every time I tried to imagine the future, I felt this strange tightening in my chest. Luke tilted his head thoughtfully. Your heart was trying to tell you something important. Sam let out a small, tired laugh. I wish it had spoken more clearly. I think it did, Luke replied gently. You listened today. Sam stared at him for a long moment. She hadn't thought of it that way. She had been thinking of running as a sign of weakness. But the way Luke said it made it feel like courage, like she finally listened to herself. She drew a slow breath as she said, My fiancé isn't a bad person. He's kind and respectable. He tries hard. But sometimes I feel like he sees me as someone I'm supposed to be, instead of someone I really am. Luke nodded slowly. That happens more often than people admit. Sam's eyes softened. He always wanted everything neat and proper. Perfect dinners, polite conversations, calm plans. He wanted me to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, even walk a certain way. He didn't say it in a rude way, but he hinted at it. Luke stayed quiet but attentive. Sam continued. I tried my best. I wore the dresses he liked. I kept my voice gentle. I pretended to be calm, even when I felt like shouting or laughing loudly. I tried to be the perfect bride everyone imagined. She looked at her hands. But the more I tried to fit that shape, the more I felt like I was losing pieces of myself. Luke's eyebrows pulled together slightly, showing quiet concern. That sounds exhausting. It was, she admitted. A bird landed on a nearby branch, shaking the leaves slightly. Sam watched it jump around the twigs, carefree and light. She envied that freedom. After a long silence, Luke said softly, You know, being tall, being strong, being expressive, those are parts of who you are. They're not flaws. Sam blinked, surprised by the directness in his tone. You make it sound better than I feel about it. I'm just telling the truth, Luke replied. She studied him. Luke had always been a man of few words, but the words he chose carried weight. Unlike others who tried to shape her into something else, Luke spoke like someone who accepted people exactly as they were. Sam's voice dropped to a whisper. Do you think I did the right thing? Luke took his time answering. Instead of rushing with comfort or judgment, he thought carefully before speaking. I think you did the honest thing, he said. And honest things are often the right things. Well, Sam felt her breath catch again, not out of worry, but out of relief. She stared at the river once more, the water sparkling under the afternoon light. Her thoughts felt clearer than they had in months. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she couldn't return to the person she was pretending to be. Luke shifted slightly, leaning back on his hands. What do you want to do next? Sam laughed softly. I have no idea. That's okay, Luke said with a gentle smile. You don't need all the answers right now. Sam hugged her knees to her chest carefully, mindful of her dress. I think I need time. Space. I don't want to go back to the chapel. Not yet. I need to think about how to explain everything without breaking down. Luke nodded. I can help you get somewhere safe and quiet. Somewhere you can think. Sam lifted her gaze. Where? I have a small cabin near the back of my ranch, he said. It's unused most of the time. It's peaceful. Nobody will bother you. You can stay there for a while, until you're ready to talk to anyone. Sam's eyes widened with surprise. I don't want to cause trouble for you. You won't, Luke said simply. It's there for moments when people need a break. And right now, you need a break. Sam hesitated. The world felt heavy on one side and strangely light on the other. But the cabin idea felt like a gentle bridge, not running away, but taking time to breathe. Would it really be okay? She whispered. Luke's response was calm and sincere. It's absolutely okay. Sam felt something swell in her chest, something warm and steady. Thank you, she said softly. I think that would help. Think then. I think that would help. Luke stood up and dusted off his jeans. He held out his hand again, the same steady offer as before. Sam placed her hand in his, and he helped her up gently, but she didn't let go right away. She held his hand a moment longer than necessary, feeling comfort in its warmth. Luke didn't pull away. He waited for her to release it on her own. When she did, she felt calmer. They walked back toward the truck together. Luke opened the door for her, and she climbed in carefully, gathering her dress. Luke closed the door softly and walked around to his side. Before starting the engine, he looked at her and said, No one will rush you. No one will force you. You take your time. Sam nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Thank you for understanding. Luke gave her a small smile. You don't need to thank me for that. As the truck rolled down the quiet road, Sam glanced out the window at the sunlight filtering through the trees. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would look like, or how her family would react, or what her fiancé would think, but she knew one thing clearly. For the first time in a long time, she was moving toward a decision that felt like her own, and Luke, sitting quietly beside her, felt like the first person who had really seen her in a very long time. The sun was beginning to sink when Luke's truck turned onto the long dirt path that led to his ranch. The sky above them glowed softly with shades of orange and gold, and the warm evening light spread across the wide open fields. Sam watched the quiet landscape through the window, her wedding dress still gathered gently in her lap. Her thoughts were slow and calm, like the river they had left behind. She still felt nervous about what would come next, but she no longer felt trapped or breathless. Instead, she felt as if she finally had a space to think, to breathe, and to listen to her own heart. Luke drove steadily, not rushing the ride. He didn't speak unless Sam looked at him. And even then, he only smiled softly, as if telling her without words that she was safe. They soon reached the back section of the ranch. The land here looked untouched and peaceful, with tall trees standing like a quiet guard around a small wooden cabin. It was simple but strong, with a small porch, a rocking chair, and a warm, welcoming presence. Smoke curled gently from a chimney pipe, left over from earlier in the day. Luke parked the truck and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was calm, not heavy. That's it, he said softly. Your place to rest. Sam stepped out carefully, her feet touching the soft grass. The breeze brushed against her dress as she looked around. Birds chirped calmly in the branches above, and the smell of fresh earth and wildflowers filled the air. It's beautiful, she whispered. Luke walked around the truck and stood next to her. It's simple, he said. But it's quiet. Nobody comes back here unless they need a moment to breathe. Sam smiled faintly. I guess today I needed exactly that. Luke nodded. Let me get the door. He walked up the small porch and unlocked the cabin. When he opened the door, a warm, soft light spilled out. The inside was clean and cozy. There was a small wooden table near the window, a bed with a thick blanket neatly folded, and a lamp glowing softly in the corner. Everything smelled like pine and fresh wood. Sam stepped inside slowly, feeling something unclench inside her chest. She touched the edge of the table gently, grounding herself. It's perfect, she said. Luke leaned against the door frame, watching her with a calm expression. You can stay as long as you need. There's food in the cabinet, blankets in the chest, and extra clothes if you want something more comfortable. They might be a little big, he added with a small smile, but they'll work. Sam looked at him, touched by the gentleness in every detail. Luke, I don't know how to thank you for all of this. You don't need to, he said. Just rest. That's enough. Sam's throat tightened with emotion. After everything she had faced that day, pressure, expectations, fear, this kindness felt like a warm light spreading through her. Luke stepped forward slightly. Do you want me to stay for a few minutes? Just until you feel settled? Sam hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I think I'd like that. He walked inside and sat on the wooden chair near the bed, while Sam sat on the edge of the mattress. They stayed in silence for a moment, listening to the soft rustling of the trees outside. Finally, Sam said quietly, I'm scared to face everyone. I know I can't hide forever. I know they'll have questions. You don't have to answer them today, Luke replied gently. Tomorrow might feel different, and the day after that might feel even clearer. Sam nodded slowly. I feel bad for running away. You didn't run away, Luke said softly. You walked toward what you needed. Sam's eyes lifted to his, surprised. You really believe that? I do, he said sincerely. Something warm spread across her chest, a sense of being understood, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Luke continued. When you're ready, you can talk to your family. You can explain everything in your own way, at your own time. And you don't have to do it alone. Sam looked at him carefully. Would you be there when I talk to them? Luke nodded without hesitation. If that's what you want, Sam exhaled, relief washing over her. Thank you. Luke stood up slowly. I'll head out now and give you space to rest. If you need anything, my house is just across the field. The porch light will be on. Sam stood too, smoothing her dress. I really appreciate everything you've done today. Luke smiled softly. Anyone who saw you today would have helped. You just happened to find me. Sam shook her head gently. No, Luke. Not everyone would have listened. Not everyone would have understood. Luke lowered his gaze for a moment, touched by her words. Well, he said quietly, I'm glad I could. He reached for the door but paused, looking back at her one last time. You're stronger than you think, Sam. The words sank deep into her heart, settling in places she had kept hidden. After Luke left, Sam sat on the bed, letting the cabin's peaceful silence hold her like a soft blanket. She touched the fabric of her dress and finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. She closed her eyes and let the weight of the day slowly ease out of her. As evening turned into night, she found one of the soft shirts Luke had left for her and changed into it. It hung loosely on her, warm and comfortable. She folded the wedding dress carefully and placed it on the chair, as if setting down a heavy chapter of her life. Then she lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking of everything she had felt that day: fear, confusion, relief, clarity. The thoughts were no longer racing. They were gentle, moving slowly like clouds drifting across a calm sky. She thought of her fiancé. She thought of her family. She knew conversations were coming, and they wouldn't be easy. But she no longer felt trapped. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had the strength to speak honestly. She also thought of Luke, his calm voice, his steady presence, the way he listened without judging, the way he understood without pushing. She felt gratitude for him, warm and deep. Gratitude for how he stepped in softly when she needed someone. Morning came with soft sunlight drifting through the cabin window. Sam woke up feeling clearer, steadier. She sat up, took a slow breath, and picked up her phone. There were many missed calls and messages, but her heart didn't tighten like before. Instead, she felt ready. She stepped out onto the porch, where the fresh morning air greeted her softly. The fields glowed with sunlight, And in the distance, she saw Luke walking toward her, with 2 mugs in his hands. He raised one with a small smile. "Thought you might like some warm tea." Sam stepped down the porch steps, her heart lighter. She took the mug, their fingers brushing gently. "Thank you," she said. They walked together toward the fence overlooking the wide-open land. The world felt calm, hopeful. Sam wasn't afraid anymore. She felt grounded, seen, understood. She looked at Luke and smiled softly. "I think today, I'm ready to face everything." Luke nodded, his eyes warm. "And I'll be right there with you." Sam felt something peaceful settle inside her. Not a rush, not a spark, not a sudden leap, just a gentle warmth that promised healing and new beginnings. She stood tall, her heart calm and clear. This time, she was walking toward her own future, one she chose herself. And in that quiet morning light, she knew she wouldn't be walking alone.